CountryWide CONNECT, connecting farmers and growers to what they need to know to grow. Your daily innovative rural show with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.
I believe we have waiting on the line our next guest. Is that correct, Cody? Just double checking. Wonderful.
Yeah, he's there.
Okay.
Joshua Tam. He is the Executive Director of Export New Zealand. Some of New Zealand's biggest exporters are calling on all political parties to back the India Free Trade Agreement, signing an open letter describing it as a strategic necessity for the country's economic future. Not everyone agrees. New Zealand First has hit back, saying businesses are effectively backing a deal they haven't yet seen in full. Joshua Tam from Export New Zealand is on the line. G'day, Joshua. Appreciate your time, mate. Thanks very much.
Cool. Thanks, Andy.
Josh, you've called this a strategic necessity. Is that about how serious this is for New Zealand right now?
Yeah, I think so. Look, we think that this deal is going to be a major win for New Zealand exporters and the wider economy. It's going to open up a lot of opportunities in one of the world's fastest growing markets in the world. And I think it will strengthen our access and our long-term economic certainty. In the midst of, all of the issues around the world that we're dealing with, the geopolitical tensions, different conflicts, or disrupted supply chains, tariffs in the United States, this deal will help us diversify our trade risks, and it will help us increase, reduce our reliance on just a few markets.
Josh, we were speaking to Joe Luxton yesterday, MP for Labor and spokesperson for agriculture. Obviously, Labor are the ones that are, stuck in the mud in the middle at the moment, contesting this $33 billion investment over 15 years. That seems like a lot in comparison to the China FTA.
Yeah, and look, we've had constructive conversations with our trade officials over the past few months, particularly around that investment chapter and around the immigration chapter too. Look, we are confident that they are putting New Zealand's interests first. We're also confident that, the whole story around that $33 billion, hasn't really been out there. It hasn't been public. We're confident in what our officials have had to say to us. Once that agreement comes out into public, once the public is able to view the text, we're confident that we've got the right end of the stick here.
Josh, just on that, on the process of how this trade agreement goes through, though, isn't it true that we actually sign it before we see the full text?
So from here, we will sign it in the full text, and also a national interest analysis will be released upon signatory. It'll come back to New Zealand, and it will need to be ratified by New Zealand Parliament. That's
an interesting process in terms of you're signing it, but you don't have the full detail. Why is it that way?
Look, I think from our end, we would have preferred to see the text, but there are other complications there on the Indian side, where they've also negotiating currently with other countries, the EU, for example. So they have asked, for that text to remain confidential, while they continue those negotiations.
Josh, the $33 billion we just talked about, and I do want to move on to the immigration, but it was put to me that that's kind of aspirational in some way from the New Zealand side. The Indians see that slightly differently, but there's no way to track whether the $33 billion has happened because it's over 15 years, right? Is it a bit of a red herring, effectively?
Not that we see. I think it is good to have that aspiration, and I think it will build strong relationships between New Zealand and India. As you've seen, we've had 28 signatories originally, but now that number has grown to 60 industry associations and companies who have signed on to our Back the Deal campaign. So there is a lot of enthusiasm from the New Zealand business sector for this deal.
So as Andy said there, the immigration, 1,000 students, has been contested by the minor parties, particularly New Zealand First. And realistically, is that a big number?
Well, look, I think, put it this way, every free trade agreement that we have signed up to up until now has had to adhere to New Zealand's domestic policies. At no point in time has a free trade agreement that New Zealand has signed up to superseded New Zealand's domestic policy. All of the visa applicants that will come to New Zealand and apply through this free trade agreement or any other will have to go through the same screening process. So there's almost no difference here between this free trade agreement or the China free trade agreement or even the UK or the EU free trade agreements.
Josh, New Zealand First, Winston Peters has come out very, very strongly against this letter. Have you had any direct discussions with New Zealand First about it?
Look, at this point, we've reached out to them and said we're happy to sit down and engage with them. That's with us and perhaps also some of our signatories that have signed on to show our strong support for this. Ultimately, it comes down to the access that we want to give our export companies. We want to focus on the real benefits here from this free trade agreement, and the benefits are reflected in those signatories. There's really good access here for our horticulture exporters, for our meat and our seafood, for our viticulture and honey, wood processors and manufacturers are really passionate about this deal. They think there's going to be great opportunities there. And even our tech and services companies have also signed up, seeing that this will create opportunities for them.
What is the rush and what is driving the rush?
Sure. So the rush at the moment, if we are too slow here, sectors can actually be left at a disadvantage. As I said before, the Indian side is engaging with other countries and regions. For example, that EU deal, the EU deal has been concluded. They've agreed on the text. That offers better access, for example, to the European wine exporters into India than ours will. But if we get our free trade agreement in force before the Europeans do, then we will actually benefit from the access that the EU negotiated. So our tariff rate for our wine exports will actually go down. And that is why I think in this case, speed is the key. We can benefit from these other agreements that other countries are signing with India.
Josh, it was put to me that, and you just touched on it, we're a rural show here. We're thinking very much access to our exporters to this massive Indian market. But the other side of the coin is actually our business opportunities to invest in India, isn't it? I think that's a really, really big part of this agreement that I don't think probably as rural New Zealand we fully understand what that can mean for our New Zealand businesses.
Yeah, sure thing. And I think, again, those benefits to the farmers and the producers out there who are listening to your show is that this will help them to engage in a new market. There are quite high trade barriers in India at the moment. They've got quite strong tariff percentages as well on a number of ag products. For example, the stats that I have here is that India will agree to eliminate or substantially reduce tariffs on 95% of New Zealand's current exports to India. There's going to be immediate elimination for sheep meat, for wool, and over 95% of forestry and wood exports. There's going to be increased quotas and tariff cuts for a whole range of horticulture exports too. Manuka honey, that tariff will be cut by 75% over the next 5 years. New Zealand is the first country to secure preferential access for honey into India. So this is a really important free trade agreement for our ag producers.
Okay, so what's next, Joshua, in regards to the political game at play? Do they actually genuinely have any clout to delay it before the election?
Look, well, this deal will need to have support from either Labour or the New Zealand First Party if it is going to be signed and ratified and into force. We will work, alongside our signatories to show that there is strong support from the business community for this deal. We will do everything that we can, and I know that our Trade Minister will also be engaging with his counterparts in the political space.
Best wishes, Joshua. Thank you so very much for your time. Joshua Tan there from Export New Zealand.
CountryWide CONNECT, connecting farmers and growers to what they need to know to grow. Your daily innovative rural show with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lampp.